Avengers Endgame had a lot of pressure on its shoulders to close off one of the most colossal phases of the MCU. Not only that, but it also had to complete every character's story arc, provide reasonable action sequences, and give viewers a solid resolution and ending. Though the movie itself does have its flaws, it thinks that it was able to achieve the standard it set out for itself. To understand the Endgame a bit better, we have to revisit 2012's Avengers. It was clear from the very start that Cap and Iron Man could not see eye to eye, and that has been a recurring theme in the subsequent movies when they form factions and square off against one another in civil war. Tony saw Steve as a highly simplistic thinker and was little more than a poster bot for America. In his view of the world, Cap had no role in the technologically advanced age they were in. However, Cap saw the exact opposite in Tony. He was a man that had the flash and the limelight, but other than his suit, he had a cold, callous heart and didn't know in his heart what he was fighting for. Over the course of the movies, both men tried to challenge their views about the other, but it was never more obvious than in the Endgame. Captain America had to be the one to pull the team together, proves that he is worthy of lifting Mjolnir, and even leads an army into battle. On the other hand, Tony, who had always come off as self-centered and brash, had literally given his life not just for a country or a people, but for the entire multiverse. So, this means that the argument and the problems that both heroes had with each other had been completely resolved, and each character had gotten his due credit. And that is just one thing to like about Avengers Endgame. Sure, it might be a movie that has crammed in way too many heroes to give any of them actual proper screen time, but it still feels a bit more emotional than the others because the characters have more depth and nuance in every scene that they play. For me, the movie really began to gain momentum when Captain Marvel was thrown into the mix. From there, the team tracked down Thanos, who was basically a shell of his former self. He had destroyed the stones and lived a hermit's life. Thor here had one of his best moments that really showed you how devastated he was as a character. We already know that he had gone into a state of some depression, which the movie brushed off as a comic relief scene with him being an anonymous gamer. But when he decapitates Thanos, we really see a more primitive side of Thor. He is more broken and beat up. We've never really seen Thor in a position where he can't get what he wants. His weapons and his powers have always meant that he had never really had to face loss. That is what makes the decapitation scene more personal. It is the catharsis of a character that had meaning taken away from him, and we see how that eventually makes him better off for it. Maybe that's the reason he seemed more jovial in his upcoming movie Thor: Love and Thunder. Another duo that had been given more traction in this movie were the team of Black Widow and Hawkeye. Putting these two together to retrieve the Soul Stone seemed like a way for both characters to come full circle. Natasha and Clint had been friends from the very start, in their initial days with the S.H.I.E.L.D., their time with the Avengers, and even their altercation at Civil War. For the first time, these characters were actually given a meaningful arc and not sidelined in the background as secondary characters. The fact that one of them had to give their life for the other to receive the Soul Stone put another moral clause in their deep-rooted friendship, and to be honest, gave more depth to their characters. Clint was the lone fighter that had never really gotten over the death of his family all those years ago, while Natasha is able to move past the wreck that had taken most of her friends. They expressed two different ways of looking at the same thing. To be honest, I would have been fine with Clint's character finally getting some solace through redeeming herself from sacrifice, but to realize that it was at the end Natasha that gave her life to give her best friend the chance to still do the right thing felt somber but inevitable. Bruce Banner was another character that they took another swing with. I know there has been a lot of backlash to the Professor Hulk idea, and many would have preferred the original variation. But in my opinion, this one just felt more fitting. It had perfectly incorporated both halves of the character into one, never leaving the audience in a lurch. Also, it would have been really difficult for them to pull off the time heist without Bruce Banner's character. But on the whole, this is a good reflection on Banner's character. In the Endgame, Bruce was one of the people that could have definitely taken down the Mad Titan, but his inadequacy had left him paralyzed by fear and feeling incomplete. Playing it this way, he knows he can always rely on the brains and the brawn to ensure that the mistakes of the past are not repeated. Unlike Avengers Infinity War, Endgame never really puts the viewer in any rush. It always lingers with every shot and echoes the feelings of all the heroes in the fallout to the snap. It makes a stark contrast between those that were able to get over it and those that weren't. It draws you into the mind of each character and through their expressions gives you a feel for what turmoil each is going through. In the end, it pulled through and catapulted the Marvel franchise into the next stages of their development. It might not have been the best ending to a trilogy, but it was the best we could have gotten with the resources and the cast the project drew on. Simply put, Avengers Endgame is one of the best comic book movies ever put to screen. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to hit the like button, and remember, for more content like this, subscribe to the channel.